It is providing excellent patient care by understanding generations. And I think that we can all relate. I can kind of gauge the age of most of us in the room, and I don't know if your home is like mine, but I've got a 9-year-old and I got a 79-year-old father-in-law, so we definitely bridge the generations in our home. But more importantly, it's in the workplace and how those generational gaps and differences and things come into play. And I know I happened to overhear an interview for a new copywriter who was very young, and I happened to overhear someone say something about, oh yeah, some people, there's a whole debate on, do you put one space after the period or do you put two spaces after the period? And the young lady was like, two? Why would you put two spaces after a period? And I'm thinking, one? When did that rule change and I didn't know about it? So generational gaps do happen in the office over the silliest little things that can make a big mountain out of a little molehill. So I am looking forward to today's presentation, as I'm sure you all are as well. Our speaker is Wendy Sellers. She's got a whole alphabet soup list of acronyms behind her in regards to all the accolades and certifications that she has. But she is the managing partner at Black Rain. And Wendy has a keen sense for business practices that manage risk while attracting and retaining top talent. She has a master's in human resources and a master's in healthcare administration, and was duly noted as the HR Superstar Practitioner in 2015 by HRO Magazine. Please give a warm welcome to Wendy Sellers.
Thank you. Okay, can everybody hear me? I'm a loud Yankee from up north, so since I have a microphone on, I'll try to keep it low. Well, again, this is me. Here I am, different hair, but that's me. Getting right into it. If you like what you see today, please connect with us online. If not, connect with somebody else. And I'll leave this up at the end too, but I would love to have you guys follow us online. Always posting things about generations, millennials, and a lot of other business tips. So if you want some free advice, you'll be getting it online. So jumping right into our presentation, again, it's about generations in the workforce. And much of the stuff that you're going to hear today, you may have already heard somewhere. And so that will be a reminder. Hopefully you will hear something brand new and say, okay, I can use this today when I walk out of here. And the goal is to give you a little bit of both. With this said, how many people here are actual medical practitioners? I don't think we really have anybody in the room, correct? All right, good. Then I could change the title of this real quick. As we were talking about patient care, in the end, we're all part of patient care because we're supporting the medical provider in one way or the other. But what we're going to go over today is really about just generations and people as customers or as employees. So we're really going to focus on customers and employees, and you can use it however you want in your workplace. Does that sound fair? Good. What does each generation of customers want? This is what our goal is, because if you can figure out what they want, then you can sell it to them. And then you can make more money, and then call me in when you have a lot more employees that need help. Generational diversity. The number one thing that I want you to get out of today is not to discriminate and don't stereotype based on a generation. So if you happen to know somebody's age or you think you can figure it out, there's a lot of other factors that go into somebody's personality and communication style than just their age. Where were they raised? Who raised them? And what culture are they from? In today's society, you have 3, sometimes 4 generations living in the same household. Grandparents are raising grandchildren, so you have a different influx of generations that pretty much say, okay, we're going to skip Gen X and a baby boomer is going to be raising a millennial. So you may have different influences. So take this all with a grain of salt, and so when you walk out of here and say, oh, you're a baby boomer, you act like this, don't do that. But maybe in your head say, maybe I need to change the way I'm discussing things with this person. So for the first time in modern history, we have 5 generations active in the economy. Not necessarily in the workforce, although that could possibly be it, depending on what your organization is. We have what we call the silent generation, which is also called veteran generation. There's like 3 or 4 other titles too. Please know, and I have down at the bottom, that there is no government agency that says We name the generations and we define what years they are. It's all the media. Somebody writes a book and says this is Gen X, somebody writes something else and says this is millennials, and then it's fact. But if you look up, if you just Google online what year are millennials, you may get a couple different age ranges. We have 17 to 33 right now, but I've seen as high as 35 and as low as 16 today. Obviously, that changes as the years go through. So you might also have different names. Silent generation is, or also the veteran generation, 73 to 90 years old. Their signposts are war and loyalty for obvious reasons. There was a lot of war going on in their young lives. Baby boomers currently are 55 to 72 years old, and their signposts are post-war and Woodstock. However, depending on where you were in the baby boomer range, 20 years is a big range. Woodstock may not have affected you at all, or you may want nothing to do with it, or you may just not remember it. Gen X, 34 to 54 years old, and are very independent and latchkey, which we'll go over that and what that means in a little bit. And then millennials, also known as Gen Y, are products of helicopter parents, and 9/11 was a huge signpost. They are currently 17 to 33 years. I always say when I'm doing this, I wish the millennials specifically had like millennials A, millennials B, millennials C, because the biggest change in most of the generations, specifically the millennials, is technology. And the first millennial, 30 to 35 years old, had the first laptop ever. Well, a millennial that's 17 right now has a laptop on their wrist. So there's a huge change in technology. And so there are 33-year-old millennials that do not identify at all with a 20-year-old. So when you're talking about millennials specifically, be kind, be considerate, take the person for who they are, not what their age is. But that's probably the biggest generation right now that's affected by technology. And then Gen Z, which we're not going to get into too much, but they're 16 years or younger. And there's a lot of surveys out there about Gen Z, but I want to know, are they surveying the 4-year-old or the 16-year-old? So I kind of just don't really pay attention to them just yet. This is on your handout that's on your page. If you don't get anything out of today, get this for your business. Communication is vastly different with the generations. So baby boomer seniors, write me. They want a written letter, they want it personalized, they want it handed to them or mailed to them. Baby boomers, call me. They want a personal phone call, they want to talk to you one-on-one. Gen X started email me, because that's when email came about, not because we just decided this. So Gen S is email me, and then Gen Y, which is the millennials, are text me. Gen Z are look at me and things go through the air. I don't really know what's happening there. A lot of images. But how does this affect your business? In marketing. If you're doing mailers, you're sending postcards or anything through the mail, you're probably only capturing 1, maybe 2 generations, and it's not the younger generations. If you're only sending email blasts, you may be missing generations. You may be missing millennials, and you may be missing the veterans or seniors. Again, they have like 10 different names. So you have to, when you're doing marketing, you have to be diverse, figure out who your target group is, and then work towards them. So you may have to have 3 or 4 different campaigns, which could be expensive. But we have members in here that can help you with that. So this is probably the most important thing you need to realize when you're doing marketing, and then when you're just communicating with your customers or your prospects. For the medical industry, when you're communicating with your patients, do you call them? Do you write them? Do you text them? Some of the laws don't allow that, so that makes it even more difficult. Does this make sense? Are you already going, oh, no. So we're going to go over the 3 main generations today, just for the lack of time. We're going to kind of skip the seniors, not that they're not important. If they are in the workforce, they are definitely important, and if they're your customer, they are even more important, but we don't have that much time, so I want to go over the 3 main generations that are in the economy. Baby boomers, again, 55 to 72. Prefer phones, talking, conference calls. So you don't necessarily have to go to their office to have a meeting. You can have a phone meeting. Whereas the previous generation, seniors, They demand it, the one-on-one attention, and a lot of in-person meetings. So baby boomers have come a long way from that generation, said, okay, we can do this over the phone, but it still better be personal. I might need to be the only one on it. They enjoy in-person meetings, however, so if that's possible, they're not going to push it away, where some of the other generations do not prefer in-person meetings as the primary source. The senior generation, which we're not going over too much, was very, very formal in the workplace. So Dr. John Smith, Mr. Jones, very formal. Baby boomers brought it down a notch and said, okay, we're going to be the first generation to use first names at work. Still formal, Joseph Smith versus Joey or Buddy. So still a little more formal than the younger generations, but this is the generation that said, let's be friends, we're here all the time. I think I also have on the handout, baby boomers are workaholics. Does anybody identify with this? I got that trait, by the way, and I'm not a baby boomer, but baby boomers are workaholics. So they said, if I'm going to be at work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, you better be using my first name, and I better be able to use yours. But it was still a little more formal. Much more personal and relational than the previous generation, because they're spending a lot of time at work and they want to be friends with people. They expect respectful communication. What does that mean? That means if you have a millennial sales rep, they might need some training, because they're not they don't mean it to be disrespectful, it's just the way it is, their communication style. If you need to hire a baby boomer, if you have a baby boomer candidate, and I know we have some people in the staffing industry here, I say go for it, because baby boomers are hard workers, they're dedicated, they're experienced. If they're looking for a job, and maybe because of a variety of reasons that are out of their control, a layoff, downsizing, whatever it might be. So if you give them the chance to, take another chance on them in their career, they're probably going to want to stay there for the rest of their career and do everything they can to help your company succeed. Don't ignore them. Communicate and listen. I hear a lot, and I'm sure some of the people in the recruiting industry hear this, oh, well, they're almost retiring, we'll just stick them in the corner. No, they have the most experience of anybody else in your company. Make them a mentor, get their information out of them, even if they're a volunteer. So for all the nonprofits that they get the baby boomers as volunteers, make them lead the initiatives, because trust me, they know what to do, and they're not afraid to tell you that they know what to do. So that's a whole other topic, though. Ask for continuing contributions. Knowledge management is slipping away every day as baby boomers retire, or attempt to retire in some cases. But every day as a baby boomer retires, some of that knowledge in your company is slipping away. So if you can capture that knowledge and put it into training the next generation, into a software program, into a process, into a procedure, into a policy manual, then when they do retire, you've at least captured some of that wisdom. Too many people aren't thinking about that. And then the person retires and they're like, well, who did this? Oh, Joni did that for the last 10 years. Oh, I didn't even know they did that. Oh, now what are you going to do? I don't know. What are you going to do? Call me. I'll help you. Don't give up on them. Provide training, especially where it is technology-driven training. Baby boomers are smart, but technology doesn't come like that, like it does millennials or Gen Z, who they're 2 years old and they have iPads in their strollers. You guys have seen that, right? I see it every day. I saw it at Universal. They were a family was getting off the Harry Potter train ride, and here's a little 2-year-old in the stroller with an iPad. I'm like, really? Really? What are you looking at over there? I just thought it was interesting. Deal with resistance to change. Baby boomers, and I know there's some in here, are known for not wanting to change. My way or the highway, it's always been this way, why do we need to change? So deal with it, explain why, explain the decision. And I say this with any generation. If you're making a change in your organization, in your family, in your neighborhood, in your community, whatever it might be, you need to explain to people why. Because the more they understand the why, the more they're going to be willing to come on board. The baby boomers specifically are very resistant to change and don't like Gen X or Gen Y making suggestions. So if you are a baby boomer and you're in that situation, take a deep breath and say, okay, I'm open to what somebody has to say, because nothing good comes from standing still. You have to keep moving. And respect their experience, because there's a lot of experience. As I mentioned, they're also becoming volunteers. Baby boomers are workaholics. They don't want to quit. So even when they retire, then they jump into another volunteer opportunity. Use that to your advantage. Help them run this group. Help them run a medical association. Have them use their experience to help your business. They have the time to shop around. So this is the biggest thing. If you have baby boomers who are your clients or your patients, if there are medical providers in here, they have the time more than Gen X or millennials, because they may or may not be retired or maybe looking towards retirement, to shop around and save. So if you've done something that has upset them, or they're not happy with your service anymore, they have the time and the ability and the experience to go, you know what, I'm going to go look for another person. I'm going to look for another provider. So you have to make sure you don't just go, oh, they've been with me for 10 years. They're not going anywhere. Baby boomers are extremely loyal, but again, most baby boomers who are retiring are on a very limited budget. And if they aren't on a limited budget, then they have the time to go shop around and buy something else. So you can't win in either direction there. Experience, do not try to pull the wool over their eyes. If you try to lie to them in marketing and in a meeting, they're going to know. They've been around the block. What's it? It's not my first rodeo, right? So you're sitting there going, okay, this person is totally lying to me, and I'm not going to use them. Gen X, age 34 to 54. I'm Gen X, so a little, I'll bash us a little bit. We use emails and websites as the primary source. So we're more likely to send an email than to pick up the phone or schedule an in-person meeting. So make sure if you have employees or clients that are Gen X, again, you can't really ask this, but you could usually judge. You want to make sure, if you just left a voicemail, if you leave me a voicemail, do me a favor, also leave me an email. Better yet, if it's really urgent, text me. Because I'm probably not going to check that voicemail till 9 p.m. tonight, or if at all. Now, they have this wonderful thing for other people who like text or email. You can go on Google Voice and subscribe to a Google Voice account, and your voicemail gets transcribed into an email or a text. I'm more likely to read that than actually click the voicemail. So you have to know that when you're communicating with Gen X customers, patients, or employees. Why aren't they listening to me? Why aren't they checking my messages? Why aren't they returning my call? Well, because you're not talking their language. The other thing that I say when we're going into organizations that have multiple generations, which all of them do now, if you're a manager and you have a team and there's 2 baby boomers, 2 Gen X, 3 millennials, it's up to you to say, this is what we're going to do moving forward. Every Monday we're going to have this meeting. I expect you to be here or call in. Our primary source of communication is voicemail, email, text. You can say that, but you can't just go through osmosis and go, oh, I just thought they knew. You have to tell people, I need you to check your email every day at 1 o'clock, whatever it is. Once you tell people, then you could hold them accountable. Osmosis doesn't work. If you just let them assume, oh, I just thought that you would check your email every day. No, that's not the case. Text, maybe. Depends on the generation. Generation X is very informal, uses humor often, largely about relationship building and socializing. When I started my career in HR, my own generation annoyed me because all the old forms were all like first name, middle name, last name. Well, Gen X started saying, well, no, I want preferred names. So Joseph, but I go by Buddy. So we had to change like all the forms and all the systems and all the name tags and all the business cards. And it is what it is. That's what has happened. But that was very hard for the baby boomers to accept. How can you go from this to using a name that doesn't even exist, a preferred name? Very about relationship building, friends at work. This is the generation that really started doing a lot of basketball games, soccer teams, bowling events, so a lot of team building events that they wanted to be part of it. And one of the reasons is Gen X were latchkey kids. Does everybody know what latchkey kids are? If you don't, I'll explain real briefly. Latchkey kids are the generation there was the first generation that single moms and or two parents in the workforce full time, but definitely a lot more single parents. I shouldn't say single moms, single parents. And so the Generation X kids, they're 10 years old, 12 years old. They had a key attached to their backpack. And so when they were leaving the house in the morning, they had to lock the house, turn everything off, lock the house. They came home from school. They got there on their own, probably by bus, walking if it was close. And there was a list, a honey-do list, a Bobby-do list, for the kid. Okay, you have to do these 3 things before I get home. Mom and Dad get home at 5:15. Kid gets home at 3:30. There's a list. You have to clean the cat litter box. You have to put away your clothes, and whatever else it was. When do you think that got done? 5:05, 4:55. Oh, I got 17 more minutes, and then you run around and got it done. But they got it done. And you didn't know that they didn't do it at 3:30. You didn't know that they did it at 5. They got it done. Well, this is where results-oriented workforce started coming into place, because now they go to work, and they're like, why do I have to do this at 1 o'clock? You said you wanted it done by the end of the day. I got it done. So does that all make sense? Everybody's childhood affects how they live in life. And baby boomers also told these kids, who were, many of them were their children, depending on when they had their kids, don't be a workaholic like me. Don't dump everything into your job. Make sure you have friends, have a life. So they listened, and now you're mad. What? No, you can't have it both ways. Well, I'm not mad at you, my kid. I'm mad at everybody else's kid. And this is the same thing that's happened with the millennials, too, which we'll go over. So kids learn something from their parents, and then they grow up and become a professional and go into the workforce, and we hate it. So anybody who has kids, stop what you're doing right now and talk to me after. I have some advice for you. The staffing folks have some advice for you, too. Definitely with Generation X, they were latchkey kids. They were left home alone, or they'd be from 3:30 to 5 when they had to come back and do those 3 chores. They were running around the neighborhood with their friends. They were riding their bikes in the woods, whatever they needed to do. It was a lot safer back then, or we think it was. There wasn't as much media, but we're going to assume it was safer and kids were allowed to roam around. They wanted to have those friendships, and then they took that into the workplace. Like I want my spare time to be filled with friends. Well, if you keep their friends at work, then they could work longer. A little HR trick there. Definitely started the shorter attention spans and short sound bites, so much smaller clips of information. So no more 4-page memos. Bring it down to two paragraphs. Otherwise, it's not getting read. Seniors and veterans, no, you have to read this 40-page research. Baby boomers, like, let's bring it down to a 4-page research. Gen X, can we just sum this up in 2 paragraphs? Millennials, do you have a picture? Just give me a picture. Just send me the picture and I'll figure it out. And they figure it out, and it blows our minds. So moving on, if you have the opportunity to hire an individual who is Gen X, they are very hardworking, responsible, and resourceful. When they were left home alone and they broke that vase, they had to figure out how to fix it before Mom and Dad got home. There was no internet to search. They went and got the clear tape, put it together, stuck it up in a corner, and hoped nobody saw it ever again. At least that's what happened in my house. A lot of broken things that were discovered around Easter or Thanksgiving when you pulled out those plates. Ooh, she's going to find it. But you got away with it for a while. Tips to manage Gen X. Give an experience that is challenging and exciting. They want the challenge. They want to be able to solve things because they know how to solve things, because they were forced to solve things when they were a kid, when they were left home alone and had to fix things without the internet. Show opportunities to grow. Excuse me. Baby boomers did tell this generation, don't work your butt off for nothing. So they took that advice from Mom and Dad and said, okay, well, if I'm going to be here working my tail off, what is my opportunity to grow? Provide training and resources to do their job. I would say that goes without saying for every generation. This generation can kind of wing it and figure it out because they had to for so long. And so The next generation, not so much, and we'll explain why, but there's a strife there even between Gen X and the millennials. They want to be treated like peers, not subordinates. So all these titles, junior and things like that, it drives Gen X nuts because they want to be your peer. If I'm going to be stuck here working with you 60 hours a week, then why can't you treat me like a peer? Baby boomers tend to say, well, you can't have this title for 6 years. You can't have this title for 10 years. Gen X started saying, no, if I have the skills, how about you just give it to me now? Millennials want a day one, and there's a reason for that too. So we'll get to that. Get rid of any silly rules. One of the silly rules that I'm talking about is the next line. Oh, I skipped one, I'm sorry. Be clear with expectations. Results-oriented, I mentioned that. They want to know, what do you want me to do today? What do you want me to do this week? What do you want me to do this month? And then get out of their way and let them do it. So get rid of silly rules such as work hours. Baby boomers are like, no. Even Gen X is like, no, we have to have work hours. You have to be here 9 to 5. Do we? Do we? What do you want done? You want this done? Why does it matter if I can do it in 20 hours or 50 hours if you're paying me the same? Now, we'll kind of put an asterisk there and park it over here because we know the Department of Labor ruling is coming, or is here already and is effective December 1st, backwards for 6 months. That's put a whole other, problem or opportunity, and I could help you guys work through that. But we're just going to assume for this conversation everybody's salaried, okay? We don't have any hourly employees. So if you have salaried employees, just tell them what to do, when you need it by, and get out of their way. If you're holding them accountable for the product, they're going to get it done, and they're probably going to do more. It's all about communication. Focus on their family and flexible work hours. Again, baby boomers told them, don't work your tail off for nothing. And so they started focusing more on their family. This is a generation that said, I need to leave at 3 because my daughter has a dance recital. And we all went, oh, what? And then we just got over and said, okay, no problem. Provide individual recognition. Not that they don't like team recognition, but definitely like to know that they've done something individually. I do a whole other training on personality styles, so that has something to do with it too. Not everybody wants to be on a stage and get recognized. Some people would rather crawl under a rock and die than do that. So, again, take a lot of this with a grain of salt because there's a lot of other factors. Provide constructive feedback often and to the point. Just get to the point. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? Have a great day. The senior generation, no news is good news. They didn't want to hear from you ever. They were like, if I don't hear from you, I'm good. Baby boomers want an annual performance review. Okay, I'm good. Gen X said, okay, can you give it to me a little bit more than that? Can you tell me what's going on as it happens? Millennials, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. Lighten up and have fun. This generation definitely wants to have fun. Again, they expect everybody to be their peers and their friends, and you're all on the same bowling team together and all that, so they want to have some fun. As customers, as we just mentioned, they started work-life balance. So if you don't give your employees flexible work schedules, and you say, no, we're open Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, but your customer says, I need you to be open on Saturday, how is that going to work? So the same thing with employees applies to customers. You need to be more flexible with customers so that you can meet their schedule, especially if they're Gen X and Gen Y, millennials. Gen X is the generation that really started giving back, and not that baby boomers didn't, but it was this big trend. Okay, what charity are you part of? What board are you on? Where do you volunteer on Saturdays? So this became a very big trend with Gen X. So they want to give back, and they ask you as a business owner, what do you do? What do you do to give back? And if you don't have an answer, especially Gen Y, the next generation, you may have an issue. So I always say with Gen X and Gen Y, whatever you're doing, be loud and be proud. Unless it's something really derogatory, then don't do that. They want relationships, so they will buy from friends. Gen X, as a customer, this is where all the sales reps started getting the budgets to take their employees or their prospects out to lunch, maybe out to dinner, maybe to have a few cocktails, but they want to be your friend. And if there's an issue, they're more likely to stay with you because they consider you a friend. So Definitely a lot more work for the businesses on this aspect. Baby boomers were more of loyalty, product. We wanted things to be made to last. And if they were made to last, then they'd stay with you. Millennials, everybody take a deep breath. Ready? Okay, so we're going to get into millennials, age 17 to 33. Again, depending on where you look, you might find different ages, but it's about the same. That's a huge difference, 17 to 33. That's 20 years almost, and how much technology has changed. So when you're dealing with millennials in this age group, make sure that they actually identify. Like I said, I know people that are in their early 30s or even late 20s. They're like, I do not identify with them. But it depends who raised them and what their culture was, where they were raised, things like that. This is another important fact, and this is actually a little outdated, but millennials will comprise the majority of the workforce by 2025. This is already happening here in Orlando. This is a national and a little outdated. I think this was a 2014 figure. This is already happening. In more suburban areas, it's happening. So builders, this color's not that great, but the builders of the dark one up there, they're pretty much gone by 2020, in between 2025. Baby boomers, all right. Oh, I'm sorry, baby boomers up here. So that head will be a few people hanging in there, work until they're 80. Everything else, even in the next, 2016? Look at that big, it's like a gray block, is Gen X, and then the next one is Gen Z. Gen Y and then Gen Z. So right now, anybody have any like high school students working for them, or you go somewhere, Dairy Queen, somewhere there's high school students. So Gen Z is in the workforce already. Depending, it may not be in our workforce because of laws, but you can see millennials are going to be the majority of the workforce. Like them or not, you have no choice to work with them as an employee and work them as a customer. I was doing a presentation recently, and one lady was like, I'm not hiring them. I said, you're going to go out of business. I'm like, that's fine. What's your 5-year plan? Because you're going to go out of business. Baby boomers will retire. Gen X will go somewhere else if they know you're going out of business. And you're not going to have any options. So I don't know if she really liked me after that, but if you know me, the truth comes out. Moving on, let me explain a little bit about helicopter parents. So helicopter parents are parents of the millennials. They were baby boomers, maybe who had kids late in life, or Gen X, and they said, we're going to have a baby, and we want them to have everything. We wanted them to have every advantage in the world so they could be the smartest. They had all natural baby food, cloth diapers, piano recitals before they were even born, Russian lessons at one years old. Their life is overscheduled. Does this sound familiar, anybody? Their 3-year-old has back-to-back meetings, play dates. What happened to just letting them play? No, I want them to give them every advantage. I want them to be in 2nd grade by 4 years old. And this is what happened. And then on top of that, the millennials, their parents said, you know what, we're going to make sure our child is heard and not just seen, as in the past. And we're going to ask them to put their input in everything. Hey, Johnny, we're buying a house in this development over here. Is that okay with you? No, Mom, I don't like that. What would happen for us? Get in the car, let's go. We already threw half your stuff away. No choice. And that's really what happens. And so the parents of millennials really didn't think this through and didn't think, oh, this is what's going to happen. They told their child, you deserve the best. They got awards for everything. That wasn't the kids. That was the parents, the soccer moms. They were the ones that said, let's give everybody awards. The kid was like, man, I just want to get dirty. Like, leave me alone. I don't really care about an award. Now we blame millennials for that. But who do we really need to be blaming? Parents. But now the parents are the employers and like, I hate you. Oh, I don't hate you. You're my kid. I hate everybody else's kid. Well, you did this. So, this is kind of funny how I'm saying it, but my point is it's not the young individual's fault. Just like it wasn't for Gen X, just like it wasn't for baby boomers, Every generation hates the next generation. Kids these days. We've been hearing this forever. The final thing on here, they were gently corrected when they need it. There was never a problem. There was never an issue. It's okay to be wrong. That's come full circle into the workforce. Why won't my millennial child or employee take responsibility? Well, because you didn't let them. They were so busy with their overscheduled life, they didn't have an opportunity to hide and fix that vase. They didn't have an opportunity to run around the neighborhood and maybe fall down and get hurt and then say, okay, I'm okay. They're 30 years old and their parents are still booking their dental appointment. Stop doing that. Just stop doing it. It's not their fault. Now managers are bringing these employees on, and again, it's a big range. I've worked with lots of millennials that I absolutely love. They're very, very smart. You know why? We made sure of that. We gave them every advantage there was for education. They're way smarter than any generation ever before. On the back of that handout that I gave you, there's an article from SCORE, and it just talks about, I can never pronounce this, but it's millennialpreneurs, so millennial entrepreneurs, that they are the most successful entrepreneurs ever. And it's because it's allowed, it's accepted in our society now to say, I'm 23 years old, I'm 30 years old, I'm quitting my job, I'm starting my own business. It wasn't always like that before. People were like, oh, what are you, nuts? You're going to be broke. Yeah, that's okay. I still live with my parents. It's fine. And why do they live with their parents? Because their parents haven't kicked them out. But seriously, a lot of them do live with their parents because of the high student loans. A lot of millennials went to school, went straight through, maybe got a master's, $100,000 in student loans. The economy crashed. A lot of people in here probably lost their jobs. So the millennials at 20 years of age, 22 years of age, come out with a master's degree. Baby boomers lost jobs. Gen X lost jobs. Millennials certainly aren't getting hired. So millennials went through about 10 years, not all of them, this is very general, but for about 10 years after graduation, so 22 to 32, piecing together jobs just to make ends meet while living with their parents or 5 people in a house trying to figure out how are we going to survive. So they piece jobs together. Okay, I'm going to be a freelance writer over here. I'm going to work at the bank part-time over here. I'm going to do this over here. And on Fridays, I'm not doing anything because I'm taking my life back and I'm going surfing. So now if they actually get a full-time career, one job, they want freedom. They want flexibility. Why? Because that's what they've had and that's what they're used to. And they're not afraid to be broke, although they are the most successful entrepreneurs. So they're not all broke, but they're not afraid to be broke because us as parents said, it's okay. It's okay. It's not an embarrassment. Everybody's broke. We're all fine. We'll figure this out together. Where in the past, it wasn't okay. It was drilled into you that it wasn't okay and then you had to survive. Does this all make sense? Why millennials are the way they are. But Gen X started the results-oriented workplace. Millennials are taking it to the next level. And millennials are like, absolutely no way am I waiting 10 years to get this position. I have the same skills as you at 2 years of experience. I'm sorry it took you 10 years, but I'm there. And I kind of have to agree with them. Now, they may not have the emotional intelligence depending on the age, but that's where managers now come in and are coaches, kind of taking over where the parents attempted to do, but possibly didn't do it the right way. Top 4 motivators for millennials. Balance and set your own hours. I just went over that of why. Leading edge. If you do not have technology in your workplace, they are not going to stick around long. This goes as customers too. If you do not have technology, the best platform of whatever it is that you have, they're going to go to somewhere else. And everybody thinks, oh, millennials, they could just, develop a website. No, that's not the case, but they could definitely operate it way better than we can. So they may not be able to develop it, but they know, oh, do this, do this. I mean, 2-year-olds are doing it now. They know how, you have a problem with your iPhone, give it to a 6-year-old. They'll fix it for you. Millennials want instant contribution. We already discussed why. Their parents ask them for decision making in the household, so they want instant contribution. And they do want stability. Because for many, not all, but for many millennials, there was a lack of stability in their early career. So if you are going to give them stability and challenge and a promising career, they'll stay longer. No one's ever going to stay at one company. That's gone. That left with the seniors. Baby boomers, maybe 3 companies, and many times it wasn't because they wanted to leave. May have been a promotion or may have been a job loss. Gen X, probably 10 jobs over your lifetime, including internships. Millennials, probably 30. But keep in mind that many of those are at the same time. And so when I see resumes, and I'm sure the staffing folks see this too, oh, they're job hoppers. No. Why don't you take a fat look at it and see in the past 2 years, they've had 6 jobs, but they were working them all at the same time. So you have to even look at resumes differently. Employees want to stay put as millennials. Make sure there's opportunity for advancement and clearly define it. Clearly. They're not Gen X. They're not going to just figure it out. Everything was always done for them by their parents, trying to be helpful, didn't want that stress on them. You just concentrate on figuring out Russian because that's going to do you really good in your career here in Orlando. And, so you just definitely have to think of it outside. They're incredibly intelligent, way smarter than all of us combined. Make sure you define their opportunity and give them a path to get there. Offer job security. I mean, I think we all want that, right? Same thing with a good insurance package because Affordable Care Act isn't really affordable at this moment in time, maybe in a couple of years. Then make sure there is developed a sense of belonging because they want to belong. They don't need to be best friends with everybody, but they do want to say, okay, I fit in here. So that's going to be a cultural shift. Although Gen X is really good at it, so if you have Gen X and Gen Y leading that, they'll make it happen. Values and motivations. We went over a lot of this already, just kind of throwing this out there. 2 things I wanted to point out. They need meaningful work. They ask, what is your purpose? So company, CEO, what is your purpose? What is the purpose of this? They want to know what your vision is. They want to know what your long-term goals are. And they want to know how you're helping the community. So very big on changing the world. And we've seen it happen, right? I mean, when we were growing up, we didn't have iPhone that we woke up to and saw what was happening over in Iraq. These individuals have been seeing it, and nothing has been good. So is there a trust issue with the world and with, older adults? Heck yeah. Do they have a reason for that? Yeah. Especially with the media. You never know what's true and what's not true, so it's very conflicting. And then the final thing on this slide that I do want to go over is diversity. Diversity for millennials is the norm. When we start talking about diversity, transgender, sexual orientation, they just look at us like we're crazy because it's not a big deal to them. It is the norm, and it's us who needs to change, not them. They just, they see it. They have friends in China. They have friends all over. They're Facebook friends, or what is it, Snapchat now, which I had a lesson on yesterday, but I still don't know how to use that. Communication, I think we could figure this out. Technology, text message. Read an article the other day, I think I posted it on our LinkedIn, that text messages get read on the average within 3 minutes. When does your voicemail get returned? How about your email? Yeah, across generations, absolutely. Because you hear that annoying little ding, unless you're smart and turn it off. But text messages across generations get read in 3 minutes. So that could be good for your clients as well. Social media, images are really big, less words, more pictures, message boards. They don't need as much face time, but they do enjoy it. So if there's going to be like a monthly meeting of clients or employees, they do enjoy that because they want the interaction and the relationship. A very informal style because we allowed it to happen, and that's all there is to it. We allowed it at one point in time, especially here in Florida. Flip-flops and jeans are the norm. They like information databases and focus groups and ongoing feedback. Ongoing feedback every single moment of the day. What I say is if you are managing Generation Y, don't plan on managing anything else. And so if there's one of you and 5 millennials on your team, if there's 1 or 2, it's a little different. But if most of your team or your customers are millennials, don't plan on doing anything else, because you are going to be a full-time mentor and coach now, and it's probably going to drive you bonkers. And if you're not the person for it, get somebody with the personality for it. It wouldn't be me, I can tell you that much. I couldn't do it. I could probably do one or two, but you have to have a lot of patience and reassurance, and that has to be your personality. Be very clear in interviews of expectations, just because they may not have had a formal job before, but just be very clear. That's for everybody, really. Have a training plan in place for current job. This is not optional. I'm doing this session tonight, specifically my audience is millennials, and my comment to them on this is be like, please be patient, because nobody has training plans in place, and then we have to develop them for you, and we're not happy about it. But in the end, it's going to drive productivity and revenue, because if you don't have to spend all your time creating processes and procedures to train people, and you already have something, it's going to cut your time in half and drive revenue. So it's a good thing. Have a development plan in place, show opportunities to grow, same with Gen X, and be extremely clear with expectations. Again, results-oriented. Get them involved in improving the company. Be open to virtual work environments. If they don't need to be at the office, don't make them be there. I know that's a hard pill to swallow, but it's the wave of the future. It's the wave of now. We talked about clubs, community events, walk the floor often. So walking around the floor with nothing in your mind that I'm going to spend the next 2 hours talking to people. And if your customers are millennials, you need to do that too. You need to do that for everybody. Provide constructive feedback, be transparent, tell the truth. They will know, and they will find out online if you are lying to them. And they will do it right in front of you too. No, your price is not the best. Look at their price is the best. And then you're going to go, oh, I didn't think that clearly. Tell them why. Make sure they understand why decisions are made. Very mission-oriented, diversity is the norm, social responsibility we've talked about, technology-driven, that's pretty obvious. How can they give you feedback? Anybody with a business, you need to have an app, a website. They're not going to wait the 12 months for that survey to come in the mail. Most millennials don't even check their mailbox. If it's a survey that comes in email, it may just go away. So they want to get on an app, a website now. And if you don't give them that opportunity, they will create it for you, and you will not be happy. So last but not least, millennials are the least engaged generation. But if you look at these results, no generation is engaged. And so I know a lot of people like to pick on millennials, but this is a little bit outdated. 2013 to 2014, the engagement, this is a Gallup survey. Millennials in 2014 were only 28.9% engaged. But look, Generation X, 32, and baby boomers, 32, almost 33. Traditionalists, which is another name for seniors, are the most engaged. Well, that's good. That's going to work out for my company.
How are you defining engaged?
So if I could actually get you the Gallup survey, so they ask a gazillion questions. Usually engaged means they know what you do, they know what your values are, they know what your vision is, and they know how all the pieces in the company work together. It's all about communication. So who's to blame for this? We are. We as business owners are to blame for this. Not the millennials, not Gen X, not baby boomers, it's the business owners. Again, osmosis does not work. You have to be very, very clear with communication of all generations. So have you learned something new? Were you reminded of something? Do you wish you did not attend? Anybody going to go home and change their parenting style? Well, this is the final statement here is change is inevitable. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. And how important is that right now? This is a book that I got a lot of my information from, and I was at a presentation of them not too long ago. It's a father-daughter team, and so it's a really funny book that they're going back and forth because they're two totally different generations. So thank you so much for your time today. I know we have some questions.
Yes, if anyone has any questions, we'll take those now, and we're going to make sure that we hand you the mic so that it gets recorded on the video, because all these presentations are archived on the website.
Hello, Jeff Holt, PNC Banks Healthcare Business Banking. So great presentation. Of course, I knew you'd do well, but related to a practice and patients. So as a millennial, let's talk about millennial patients and getting them engaged and keeping them engaged. Can you give some good pointers? Because you're talking about attracting, engaging, and keeping engaged and the no-show rates of a patient's appointments. How can I counsel my clients in that area? Just some, I'd say, main points around that.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for that. So in order to keep millennial patients engaged or customers in general that have an appointment, you have to use technology, apps, text messages. I mean, a lot of doctors' offices now are following up with an email, a phone message, and a text message, or 2 or 3 text messages the couple days before the appointment. And I know even for me, it works great because you may have put it on your calendar. If you can have some kind of system that adds things right to their Outlook, 'cause most millennials have some form of either Outlook or Google Calendar. So you need to have those options. A lot of emails, you can say add to calendar. Do you have iPhone or iCal or Google Cal? So you want to do that. And text messages are probably one of the best things. You want to get it on their calendar and then get them to remind it. And there's a lot of systems out there. I don't know what they are, but there are a lot of systems out there that you can just load this into their profile and it does the work for you. So it's not like you're paying a receptionist to, okay, send out these 5 text messages. It does all the work for you. The key, though, is you have to sometimes not only get their phone number, but get their carrier name as well. Did you have a question?
Oh, okay.
Those of us that are just barely baby boomers, I'll tell you that, and we hire a lot of Gen X and millennials. When you say that they're going to change jobs like 30 times, you know, how do you get someone to be loyal to your company? You're going to spend all this time, money, energy invested in training them, and I feel like sometimes I'm just training them for their next job.
Yeah.
And you know, do you just constantly have a program of bringing new people in because you know the other ones are going to leave? I mean, that's really challenging, especially when you're trying to provide continuity to your customers.
Yep, absolutely. And I get this question every single time I do this presentation, and it's a very good question, but it is a pain point that is now part of business. So that when I put up their training program is no longer optional, you have to have a training program in place because you are going to be doing a lot more training, either from replacing or growing, but to be honest, from replacing. It's the way it is moving forward, and I mentioned healthcare reform a little bit, not to get into it too much, but if healthcare reform ever does what it was intended to do, where healthcare is actually affordable for everybody, you're going to see a lot more people getting rid of their corporate jobs and being, 1099s and freelancers. And so that's going to be even more of a challenge because now you're going to have to train freelancers, which kind of, doesn't really go well and conflicts with the IRS rules. So this is a huge game changer. Generation Y, the millennials is changing the game. They're getting the blame of it, but they're not the ones that actually drove it. But I agree. I said this to someone recently, and she did not like this answer either. It is a new operating cost that you cannot do without. Just like insurance or retirement. Once you have it, you can't take it away. You can, but that would be not very smart. But yeah, training is going to be a huge operational cost. And so that's where you have to get smart and savvy of how can I keep these people as long as possible. Some millennials might stay 15 years. The average is probably going to be 3 to 5 years. Sorry.
And I think that when you consider how many college courses are virtual today, and you no longer meet in a giant room of 300 other students, it's all, UCF, most of their classes, I think, are all virtual, even if you have a couple on campus. So to have that kind of virtual upbringing, and then to go to, I got to be in an office? Why do I have to do that?
Right.
It makes sense.
I was just going to add that most people, around the 30s, they still need to be answered, what's in it for me? That's the biggest thing, I think, and the training, if they could be spread out in such a way that if here's this chunk of training, and this is what's in it for you, bam, go and use it, and then in a year you get this training, or 6 months, or whatever. You know what I mean? To entice them to stay, you have to still answer often, what's in it for you?
Yeah, and that's with every generation, right? I mean, every
but
generation
it's even
wants
more
to know.
so, I think. Do you find that?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the one thing I would caution is that if you spread it out too far, you will lose the engagement. And you will say, well, this, you know, if your competitor is doing something differently, they're going to go over there. Or they're going to learn everything they possibly can from you and then become your competitor. And that's it. So it is a huge game changer, and technology is the driving force, and then helicopter parents.
In response to his comment, 35 years ago, I had a company between 15 and 25 employees, and we went from employees to W-9s, to contract workers. And we picked out the best ones and gave them so much, kept them loyal, they stayed with us a long time, and they would never go anywhere else because they could never get as much as we gave them. And that was the key. Just constantly get, and it was worth it because the more we gave them, the more productivity we got. And it was a win-win situation. No, I mean, we gave them more money, we gave them more free time, we gave them more stuff, and they just worked harder for us. And these were contract workers. They could have gone anywhere they wanted.
Yeah.
And we taught them a lot, but we wouldn't teach them everything we knew. So, because we knew they were going to be leaving sooner or later and be our competitors, they never knew as much as us. They were just good.
And the great point about that is you have to find out what that group of workers wants, because they may not, money isn't necessarily the driving factor anymore, but something else is. So how do you find out? You ask them. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
We got one more question.
Thank you. I'm in the staffing industry, and I don't know if you're seeing some of this as well. A lot of my clients have to hire a lot of millennials, especially in non-clinical positions, and then you've got managers that are in the previous generations that are so afraid and do not know how to manage them, and they're afraid of turnover. So what I'm seeing is a lot of the millennials there's no structure, there's no expectation set, and they're letting the millennials kind of, the monkeys run the zoo. And because they're afraid, and they're the parents that created this type of situation, but they're still seeing turnover, and then they don't understand why.
Right.
And there's a lot of the feedback that I get from the millennials when we are pre-screening them for placement and so forth is, I wasn't respected, a lot of entitlement, and I'm seeing a lot of that in the management just has no idea how to handle any of this. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where I say if you have high volume of millennials in your workforce or even in your customer base, you need to put somebody in there that could be a coach and mentor. I have this client that I was doing this CEO roundtable with, and the whole executive team's in there, and we were talking about this, and we got some millennials, and everyone's kind of giggling and looking at this one lady. I'm like, so is your team millennials? And she's like, yeah, but she had the perfect personality. Nothing bothered her. You could tell she was a coach and mentor. And I'm like, I literally turned to the CEO of the company and said, she better not be doing anything else. And he's like, she's not. We took all responsibilities away from her except for train these people because they're the only people we have moving forward. So it's definitely, like I said, a game changer, and it is very difficult for managers who are Gen X and baby boomers to get on board with this, especially if you don't have the personality like me. My personality is suck it up buttercup, but it doesn't really work, so don't put me in that game. Put somebody else in there.
Okay, we'll
I think
sneak
we're
in
sneaking
one more
one
question.
in.
Thank you. I'm a millennial. Hi, guys.
Thank you for Amazon Prime.
I actually get asked this question a lot. I do a lot of consulting with companies on turnover rate and talent management. Biggest thing I've seen with managing millennials is you have to establish what is your return on investment on this employee. If it's a 15-year, if it's a 20-year, whatever it may be, even if it's 5-year, you have to have an idea of what your return on investment on this employee is. And then from there, like she said, having a clear path, having a clear succession plan of what this employee is going to do during the time frame they're with you. And having that outlined and having that step by step and that constant one-on-one reassurance back and forth through that program, you will get that return on investment. If you have a plan, I need this employee in place for 2 years or 3 years, that's where my return on investment is. as long as you have a succession plan where that person is constantly feeling engaged and constantly is achieving their benchmarks through that 2, 3, 4-year plan, you're going to have them there for that time. But what's been your experience in seeing that model, the carrot and the stick? It's been bad?
Yeah, it's usually not well thought out. I'm actually doing a presentation at HR Florida Conference on Monday specifically about partnering with the CFO for success. And HR and HR-minded people, small business owners, need to start thinking like the CFO with metrics and running your business based off of metrics and not feelings. And it's a hard switch because in order to get HR metrics, you need HR software and you need things that the CFO can work with. So it's expensive. It's very expensive, but what's your alternative? Your alternative is to not have any employees in 5 to 10 years. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Wendy.